I praise my wife all the time because that is the voice of God towards her.
I mess up my wife all the time because I want more sex the rest of my life. And I just really mean it with Lisa. I love her so much. She satisfies my inner being.
So I got 30 years and I'm still butterflied as soon as she walks. Seriously.
That's good.
And these are what she wants to hear. So if you will tell her, you satisfy me, it'll mess her up for at least a week.
There is a woman who has been present at every stage of the most documented scandal in modern Christian broadcasting, and she has never said a single public word about any of it. Her name is Lisa Weiss. She was married to Doug Weiss for more than 30 years. She co-built the counseling center that became the foundation of his entire professional identity. She was in that building in Colorado Springs when her husband filed for divorce. She was in that building when he got engaged to Joni Lamb. She was in that building when he married Joni Lamb on June 10th, 2023. She was in that building through 3 years of authenticated recordings, published expense reports, GPS trackers, a dying wish, a sealed estate, and a funeral where Jonathan Lamb sat behind a camera while nobody said his name. And she was in that building when Joni Lamb died on May 7th, 2026. The internet has been asking one question loudly ever since Joni's death was announced. Will Doug go back to Lisa? The short and honest answer, as of the research for this video, is that there is absolutely no public evidence or official indication that Doug Weiss plans to return to Lisa Weiss romantically. That finding is confirmed directly by reporting that has tracked this story since Joni's death. The reunion framing you may have seen in other thumbnails is not a confirmed fact. It is a question. And this video is going to answer it the right way, not by fabricating a resolution nobody has, but by laying out the verified documentary record completely so you can understand what the facts actually say and what they leave genuinely open. Before we go any further, the necessary disclaimer. Everything in this video is drawn from primary source documentation. The core verified reporting comes from the Roys Report, founded by veteran investigative journalist Julie Roys, a former CBS television reporter and Moody Radio Network host. Additional confirmed sources include the Colorado court-filed divorce record published by the Roys Report, the 2019 Daystar television footage confirmed and referenced by the Roys Report, the internal Daystar salary documents published by the Roys Report in March 2025, Denise Boggs's published letter obtained and verified by the Roys Report, the November 2002 and 2010 Colorado State Disciplinary Records published in full by the Roys Report, the Colorado Division of Regulatory Agencies Professional Licensing Database, an analysis of Doug Weiss's dissertation and his doctoral institution published at dardajamsep.com, and the Fort Worth Report's confirmed reporting on Joni Lamb's death. Where facts are documented by primary sources, we will say so. Where questions remain genuinely open, and several do, we will say that too. Let us start with who Doug Weiss was before any of this happened, because you cannot understand the significance of what has been documented without first understanding what he built, and specifically what he built with Lisa. Doug Weiss founded Heart to Heart Counseling Center in Colorado Springs, Colorado. The center's own website describes him as a nationally recognized psychologist and sexual addiction expert, the author of more than 40 books, a television host, and an international speaker. For decades, his professional identity was constructed around a single proposition: that broken marriages can be saved, that sexual addiction can be overcome, that intimacy can be restored, and that commitment to a covenant marriage is worth fighting for. Those were not just therapeutic positions. They were the books, more than 40 of them. They were the 3-day and 5-day intensive programs at the center. They were the reason Christian couples in crisis drove or flew to Colorado Springs and spent between $4,000 and nearly $15,000 plus travel, plus a $2,000 premium for Weiss's personal counseling time on top of the base cost. All of this documented by 7 former female clients who spoke to the Roys Report on the record. And at the center of that ministry, in virtually every public appearance Doug made across those decades, was Lisa. She was not a peripheral figure in his professional world. She was its foundation. She was the evidence that his teachings worked. She was the real marriage behind the marriage advice. In a 2019 appearance on Daystar television, footage that the Roys Report confirmed exists and that Daystar subsequently filed multiple copyright strikes against after it was posted publicly, Doug Weiss described his wife, Lisa, in terms that left nothing ambiguous. He said she had the purest heart he had ever met. He described her as someone who deeply satisfied his inner being. He listed the qualities that made her irreplaceable to him. Those words were spoken on camera, on the same network he would later co-host with the woman he married after leaving Lisa. They were spoken 3 years before he filed for divorce. Now let us go to the document that defines the timeline of everything that followed. On January 27th, 2022, Doug Weiss filed for divorce from Lisa Weiss in a Colorado court. That date is a confirmed and published court record, linked directly by the Roy's report. Marcus Lamb, co-founder of Daystar television network, had died 58 days earlier on November 30th, 2021. By May 31st, 2022, the divorce was finalized. Less than 6 months after Marcus Lamb's death, the man who had described Lisa as having the purest heart he had ever met was legally divorced. Here is the detail that compounded that timeline in a way that multiple former clients described as a second betrayal. Doug Weiss finalized his divorce in May 2022. He did not announce it publicly until February 8th, 2023, 8 months later. In the months between those two dates, he was counseling clients, running intensives, collecting thousands of dollars per couple, and presenting himself, according to those clients, as a married man whose methods had worked in his own life. He was also, during that same period, dating Joni Lamb. He became engaged to Joni Lamb, and he married Joni Lamb on June 10th, 2023, 3 weeks after his delayed public disclosure of the divorce. Sonia Barry Pruitt, one of the former clients who spoke to the Roy's report by name, put it directly: "You're not going to go see a sex addiction therapist for an intensive if he's divorcing his wife. You would want your money back because that's fraudulent." Karen Relos, a coach for partners of sex addicts who had trained under Weiss, told the Roy's report, "Doug purposely talked about his happy marriage with Lisa, and it turned out he was already divorced. The discouragement and shock, speaking for my clients, they felt betrayed." Now we need to address the professional record around Doug Weiss's credentials, because this is an area where the documented public record is specific and consequential, and where the script from the uploaded file correctly flagged the need for precision. The script mentioned 2 Colorado state disciplinary actions and raised questions about his doctoral institution. Both of these areas have been confirmed and published by the Roy's report in detail, and we are going to walk through exactly what the records show. On the disciplinary history, the Roy's report, in its reporting on former heart-to-heart clients, published the 2 state board actions in full detail, citing the Colorado Division of Regulatory Agencies' professional licensing database as the authoritative public source. The first action came in November 2002, when the State Board of Licensed Professional Counselor Examiners issued a formal letter of admonition to Weiss for misrepresenting his credentials. Specifically, Weiss had referred to himself as a licensed marriage and family therapist, a term that in Colorado is a protected professional designation, reserved for those actually licensed in that specialty. According to the Colorado Professional Licensing Database, Weiss has been a licensed professional counselor since 2000 and a licensed psychologist since 2008. He has never held a license as a marriage and family therapist. The board found he misrepresented his credentials by using that protected title. That is not an allegation. It is a confirmed state board finding, published in the state's formal licensing records. The second action was more serious. In 2010, both the Colorado Board of Psychologist Examiners and the Board of Licensed Professional Counselor Examiners issued a joint final agency order against Weiss. The order arose from a 3-day intensive Weiss conducted in 2008 with a married couple. The state boards found that rather than assessing the couple's situation, de-escalating their conflict, providing therapeutic methods to strengthen the marriage, and working on the relationship, Weiss had done the opposite. The order states, in the Colorado agency's own language, that Weiss became an executioner of the marriage and rushed both of them into discussions about ending the marriage, distribution of marital assets, divorce, both individually and as a couple, and moving on with their lives, including writing anger letters, writing goodbye letters to their dreams, and writing goodbye letters to each other. The boards determined that Weiss had failed to implement appropriate therapeutic interventions and had instead elevated the marital discord. Weiss accepted and agreed to the order on November 23, 2010. That finding, that a marriage counselor who built his career on saving marriages was formally found by state regulators to have functioned as, in their words, an executioner of a client's marriage, is not a matter of allegation or commentary. It is a matter of state regulatory record, published in full by the Roy's report. On the doctoral degree, Doug Weiss holds a Ph.D. from North Central University in Prescott, Arizona, awarded in 2004, based on a dissertation titled "The Prevalence of Depression in Male Sex Addicts Residing in the United States." This is a confirmed and verifiable public record. The dissertation's bibliographic details have been retrieved from National University's library system, which acquired North Central University in 2019 after North Central was merged with National University in 2022. The key facts about North Central University are these. It was a for-profit institution founded in 1996. It was placed on financial monitoring by the United States Department of Education in 2011 after failing its financial responsibility test. It failed that test again in subsequent years, scoring 0 in the 2010 to 2011 cycle. And it was ultimately absorbed by National University rather than continuing independently. It was not shut down by the federal government for issuing fraudulent degrees, which is how the claim has been circulated in some commentary. That specific characterization is not accurate based on the documented record. The more precise and defensible statement is that North Central was a financially troubled for-profit institution whose academic standards have been publicly questioned and whose degree in this field has been examined and found by independent academic observers to raise questions about the rigor of the doctoral program. We will not overstate what the record supports, but the record does support the statement that the institution where Weiss earned his doctorate had significant documented financial and accreditation difficulties throughout the period of its independent operation, and that the credential itself has been publicly scrutinized in connection with his work as a nationally promoted Christian counselor. Now let us go to the documented professional concerns that former clients raised with the Roy's report, because these go beyond the credential questions and speak directly to what happened inside the intensives, where couples spent up to $15,000. 7 former female clients spoke to the Roy's report, requesting anonymity given the personal nature of the issues involved. Their accounts are consistent and specific. Several reported that during the pre-polygraph disclosure meeting, where their husbands were expected to fully disclose their sexual history before taking the polygraph, they learned for the first time that their husbands' addictions and infidelities were far more extensive than they had known. One woman described learning of her husband's behavior and having her facial reaction immediately shut down by a counselor who told her it was not that bad before she could say a word. A counselor, she said, told her to write down 10 things she could have done differently to prevent her husband's sexual addictions. Another was assessed as an intimacy anorexic within a very short time of learning her husband's secrets, a label her husband then used as justification to leave the marriage. The polygraph protocols at the related company, Honest to Pete, also drew professional criticism. Michael Martin, a licensed polygraph examiner and member of the American Polygraph Association, told the Roy's report that a test with more than 4 relevant questions is not professionally valid. Accuracy compounds downward with each additional question beyond 4. Most of the women told the Roy's report that their husbands' tests had more than 4 questions. One was told the standard was 6. One saw a test of 10 questions. One woman's husband passed the heart-to-heart polygraph and later failed a polygraph on the same issues conducted independently in their home state. Her husband has since admitted to the affair that the heart-to-heart test indicated he had not had. The polygraph examiner at Honest to Pete is Chase Cocking, Doug Weiss's son-in-law. Cocking is not listed as a member of the Colorado Association of Polygraph Examiners or the American Polygraph Association, according to those organizations' published membership records. The Colorado Association of Polygraph Examiners confirmed to the Roy's report that Honest to Pete has no affiliation with them, and they are therefore unable to verify the accreditation or backgrounds of its examiners. Polygraph examiners are not licensed in Colorado, meaning there is no state regulatory oversight of the practice. Heart to Heart and Honest to Pete share the same phone number, according to their own listings. Neither responded to the Roy's report's requests for comment on the allegations, except that Weiss requested questions by email and then did not respond to most of them. This is the institution that received a 6-figure consulting salary from Daystar television network, per Jonathan Lamb's direct testimony to the Roy's report from the moment Doug married Joni in June 2023. Jonathan also confirmed to the Roy's report that when he attempted to access 2023 payroll data through Daystar's HR software, staff told him he was permitted to view every employee's salary in the system except 2, Joni Lamb's and Doug Weiss's, per Joni's personal instructions. The amount of Weiss's consulting compensation from Daystar was never disclosed publicly. It stopped when Joni died. This is also the institution whose founder wrote publicly in 2017 about the enemy voice that tells men they deserve a better wife, urging men to fight that sense of entitlement and cherish what they have. That article has since been removed from public view, according to commentary that has circulated widely in connection with this story, without public denial from Weiss. If Doug Weiss wrote in 2017 that men should resist the voice telling them they deserve better, and then filed for divorce 5 years later, 58 days after a wealthy widow's husband died, the gap between those 2 data points is not something any documentary record can bridge. It is something only Doug Weiss himself could explain. He has not chosen to. Now let us look at what the documented record tells us about where Doug Weiss stands today, in July 2026 dossiers, as objectively as the verified sources allow. He is a widower. Joni Lamb died on May 7, 2026, at approximately age 65 in Tijuana, Mexico, at an alternative cancer treatment clinic, where she had been receiving care in the months before her death. The Fort Worth report confirmed her death that day. Daystar's statement described her passing without specifying the cause. Doug posted on Facebook on the day she died. "Today I lost my wife, Joni. There are no words." That post is documented and published. It is one of the last public statements Weiss made in the period following her death. The Daystar platform is gone. During his marriage to Joni, Weiss co-hosted Ministry Now and hosted his own program, Healing Time with Dr. Doug Weiss. The network under Marcus and Joni Lamb had reached, at its peak, approximately 64.7 million American homes. That access, the television appearances, the co-hosting role, the direct reach to Daystar's donor and viewership base, ended with Joni's death. The board members who remained in control of Daystar, Tom Callender, CFO Arnold Torres, and the operational leadership structure that had fired Jonathan Lamb, placed a GPS tracker in his vehicle, hired a private investigator to follow his family, and sent an armed security guard to his home on a Saturday morning, have given no public indication that Doug Weiss has any continuing role at the network. The platform is gone. The six-figure consulting salary is gone. It was tied to his relationship to Joni, and with Joni gone, the documented basis for that payment has ended. There is no public indication of any contractual arrangement that would continue it. What remains is Heart to Heart Counseling Center. The center is confirmed as still operating at 720 Elkton Drive, Suite 100, Colorado Springs, Colorado 80907, with its phone number listed and its website, dardugweiss.com. Still active as of the research for this video. Doug Weiss is still listed on the center's own website as its founder and executive director. He is still listed on Psychology Today's database with his Colorado license number. And Lisa Weiss, according to every professional listing available, is still there. Here is the part of this story that the documented record confirms and that almost no commentary has addressed with the precision it deserves. Doug Weiss and Lisa Weiss are not simply a divorced couple with no remaining connection. They are business co-owners. Heart to Heart Counseling Center is a shared professional asset. Lisa co-built it across more than 30 years of marriage and professional collaboration. She did not leave when Doug filed for divorce. She did not leave when he married Joni. She did not leave when the Daystar scandal became the subject of hundreds of investigative articles and dozens of authenticated documents. According to every available professional listing, she is still there. And a business co-ownership cannot be dissolved by personal choice the way a marriage can. It requires a negotiated legal process, a buyout, a dissolution agreement, a structured separation of assets and liabilities that both parties have to participate in and agree to. There is no public record of any such process having occurred. This is the documented fact that makes the question of what happens next between Doug Weiss and Lisa Weiss genuinely different from an ordinary post-divorce curiosity. It is not just a romantic question, it is a business and legal question. They are professionally connected to a shared asset that still has clients, still has a phone number that rings, still has a website that promotes intensive programs, and still carries Doug Weiss's name on every page. Whatever happens between them personally is their private business. What happens professionally between them is a question that affects every person who might consider contacting Heart to Heart Counseling Center in Colorado Springs for help with their marriage. And Denise Boggs, the counselor who knew both of them, who had counseled both Doug and Lisa in the period before the divorce, who wrote in her published letter obtained by the Roy's report that she had witnessed Joni fall under a spirit of deception through Weiss's influence, who described Weiss as a wolf in sheep's clothing and stated he was of no caliber for such a high platform. She made a professional observation in that letter that extends beyond Joni and Doug to the institution itself. She wrote that the enemy had successfully used this situation to mock the marriage covenant through one of the strongest Christian television networks in the nation. What Boggs was describing was credibility damage, the systemic damage done to every couple that had ever placed faith in the brand Doug Weiss built, paid thousands of dollars to experience the intensive programs he built, and trusted that the man at the center of it had done what he told them was worth doing. That credibility damage is now the permanent context in which Heart to Heart Counseling Center operates. The man whose name is on the building divorced his wife of 30 years, 58 days after a wealthy widow's husband died, married that widow, received an undisclosed six-figure consulting salary from her television network, co-hosted Christian television programs for 3 years, was widowed, lost his platform, lost his income stream, and returned to the only professional structure that predates all of it, the center in Colorado Springs and the woman who never left it. Now let us be completely honest about what the verified record does not tell tell us, because there are several things nobody outside their private lives knows, and saying so clearly is not a weakness of this reporting. It is what honest reporting looks like. Nobody knows whether Doug Weiss has reached out to Lisa since Joni's death. Nobody knows whether Lisa would receive such a reach or what she has said to anyone privately about where things stand between them. Nobody knows what the legal structure of their business co-ownership looks like in detail or whether negotiations about its future have taken place. Nobody knows what Lisa Weiss believes about what happened to her marriage, what she thinks about the disciplinary record, what she has said to clients who have asked her directly, or what she intends to do professionally in a center whose public identity is now permanently entangled with an investigative record that runs to dozens of published articles. And nobody knows what Doug Weiss intends, whether he plans to rebuild his practice quietly, whether he will seek a public platform elsewhere, whether he will address any of the documented concerns about his credentials and methods, or whether he will remain as silent as he has been since Joni died. What the verified record leaves us with is this. A business they built together is still operating in Colorado Springs. A woman who gave 30 years to that man and that practice is still in the building. A man who built his entire professional identity on saving marriages has now had two of his own end, one by divorce, one by death. And the documented record of why the divorce happened, how quickly it happened after Marcus Lamb died, how long Weiss concealed it from clients while running intensives on the sanctity of marriage, what the state boards found about his practice in 2002 and 2010, and what 7 women said about what happened to them when they spent thousands of dollars on the hope he sold them, all of that is permanently in the public record. It cannot be deleted, it cannot be copyright struck, and it does not disappear because Joni Lamb is gone. The question the internet is asking, will Doug go back to Lisa, is the wrong question. The right question is this: what does Lisa Weiss want for her own life, her own professional future, and her own peace? She has never answered that question publicly because she has never been asked it publicly in a way that left room for her own voice rather than someone else's narrative. She has been present through all of it, quietly, without a statement, without a press release, without a Facebook post. In a story that has generated more commentary than almost any Christian media scandal in recent memory, she is the only figure who has chosen complete silence. That silence is hers. It belongs to her. It may be the most powerful statement in this entire story, that the woman who was there before any of it started and who stayed through all of it has decided that what she has to say about it, if anything, will be said on her own terms, in her own time, to whoever she chooses to say it to. The rest of this story belongs to Doug and Lisa Weiss privately. The part that belongs to the public record, the divorce filing date, the state board actions, the client testimony, the concealed salary, the concealed divorce, the platform that is now gone, and the institution that is still open in Colorado Springs, you have heard in full today. Sourced to documents you can read yourself. Every primary source is linked below. If this story matters to you, if you are a former heart-to-heart client, if you gave to Daystar during these years, if you have been following the investigative reporting from Julie Roys and the Roys Report and want to support the work that made these documents public, the links below will take you directly to the sources. The Roys Report is an independent nonprofit journalism outlet that depends on reader support to continue this work. Thank you for watching.